Hello and welcome to Colette and Matt have entered the chat. This is a weekly casual conversation about the most important topic in the history of human civilization. That's right. Say it with me. Video games. I am here with the one, the only, the author, the Twitch streamer, the games journalist, Colette Bennett. Colette, who are you? How are you? What are you doing? What's going on?
I'm great. I can't believe I'm on a podcast again. I think it's been 10 plus years.
You have done no podcasting since the olden days.
No, not since Retro Force Go. I think I've showed up on a few people's podcasts as a guest, but never like a podcast that has like my name in it. I'm tickled.
Tell us. My name is Matt Silverman, but we're going to get to that in a second. Colette, tell us who you are. Tell me who you are, because we've never met. We just got connected through Zoom here. No, I'm just kidding.
Right. I just bumped into you. Let's see. For my story, I like to tell people that I pretty much clawed my way into the world of games journalism as a gonzo journalist. And what I mean by that is that one day I was like, I really, really want to write for Kotaku. And so I emailed them and I made a blog and I was like, hi, I would like you to hire me. And they were like, hello, here's $250. Go write a story.
And that's how it works. That is how media works. You just email, say, I want it, and then they will give it to you. That's been my experience.
I literally went on my live journal and was like, oh my God, I can't believe this is happening.
Okay, wait, You said the beautiful words live journal, but I also want to put a date stamp on this. What year are we talking here?
We are talking about the year 2007, and I had a really boring job that I hated, and I pretty much just would get off work and go write in my gaming blog. And I had nerdy friends, and I talked about games with them, but it wasn't the same. I just had this burning desire to write about video games. And also, there were so few female voices in the world about video games.
Back then, holy cow.
I think I might have known 3, and they were just people I well, back then, standing didn't exist, but I stand them on Twitter before standing was a thing.
Twitter, though, when's Twitter?
Twitter was so different, different.
But and Twitter was on the scene, 2007?
Twitter was on the scene, believe it or not. And it was very, very early, and being on it at that time period was a to do, but it wasn't like it is now. I hate to sound like an indie hipster, but it was really cool because it was a lot smaller.
Yes, that's exactly what it was. Yeah. My wife is an actual trained journalist, went to school to do it, and I remember vividly we were riding home on the train together from New York City, and she was like, it was part of her job to get other journalists trained and figured out what this whole Twitter thing was. Because back then it was hey, this could be a tool for journalists. Well, we're going to check it out.
Right.
And she explained what Twitter was to me on the train. And I was like, oh my God, I have to do this. I have to figure it out. And early Twitter for me was joke Twitter. And it was a really truly lovely small community of I followed 50 people, they followed me back, and we were in a constant hangout together.
Oh my gosh, that sounds so nice. And I relate, because for me gaming was very much the same. I start asking for jobs and people start paying me to write about video games, and I'm like, what the hell is happening? And then I ended up
You got the Kotaku gig, a freelance gig.
I did. I freelanced for them for a little while, and
what did
then
you
it was
write?
around that.
What was your first thing? They said, "I want to write this." They said, "Here's the cash to submit your draft." What do you remember? What that was?
I sure do, and I don't think it exists anymore online, sadly. But it was covering a video game concert, and it was a band called the Megas, who I wouldn't be surprised if they're not still together today. And I just went to this concert and just lost my shit completely over the fact that I was getting paid to do this. And that's pretty much how my entire career started.
A live in-person concert. What's the video game connection? I've never heard of this group.
The Megas are a Mega Man cover group. And they are, or were, I should say, I don't want to assume that they're still around. They may be, but they were one of a whole circle of amazing video game bands that showed up at a wonderful conference that happened every year for quite some time called MagFest. And I just kind of fell into that and fell into like learning about all these nerds that were making video game music and making their own games. And it just, Matt, it felt like heaven.
Spectacular. And I'm a big fan of the internet video game cover remix culture. And I am, of course, how could I not assume that there are live groups doing it too? But this is the first I'm really hearing of this scene. And you were mentioning, oh, maybe they're still around, maybe they're not. And pandemic aside, is the video game live performance music scene still a thing, or has it mostly moved to the YouTubes and Bandcamps, SoundClouds
No,
of the
it's
world?
still very much a thing. MagFest is the heart of it, although that is a long story and I'm not going to tell it on this podcast because that has changed a little bit, but Overclocked Remix is kind of like the center of that community. And it is just, oh my God, it is the most amazing community. But a lot of those people either have gone to Twitch or new people have gone to Twitch and founded their communities there. So for instance, I listened to a stream that I was actually listening to before I came to do the podcast tonight of a streamer, musician, gamer whose name is Orchestra Music. And actually we could put him in the show notes if we'd like, but he is absolutely incredible.
Is he the piano guy?
Yep.
So I was grabbing your Twitch link to put it somewhere on the website show notes, and we'll get to that in a second. And I think you were, forgive me, I love Twitch. I'm there often, but I don't know the proper terminology. Were you hosting his channel?
I do host his channel.
You were not live. Therefore, if I go to your page, there's either nothing going on or you're hosting someone else's channel. And I saw him and I was like, wow, this guy.
He's so talented. But I mean, this is the thing. It's like, it's not just him. There's just this massive community, of incredibly talented, everything from, video game artists to, musicians to, you name it, like it's there. And to me, the same excitement that we're talking about, like revisiting like Twitter in 2007 is present on Twitch now.
I think that's right. That's perfectly stated. I love that.
Yeah, and I love it. It feels like, Twitch is not indie. We all know it's owned by Amazon, but it has something. Right. It's hard for me to put words into it exactly of like what exactly it feels like. It doesn't feel like the Wild West.
You already did. You crystallized it perfectly. My concern is that back in those, it's a double-edged sword. Back in those days, 2007 and such, those startups that were getting us all excited about the internet and the beginnings of social media were startups. They were independent companies. They weren't evil yet, but they were all backed by venture capital. So it was a huge bubble. And the flip side of that now is like they're all owned by mega corporations. So like, I don't love that Amazon owns Twitch, but like Twitch will be around and successful in 5 years, 10 years, maybe, I don't know.
Yeah. I do at the very least like the fact that like something I'm enjoying and I love is not going to go anywhere because I know it's well funded on one hand. But on the other hand, that is a piece of it. I will tell you this though. I think, and if I'm telling you something you already know, please do stop me. But I think that what's currently happening with Twitch now and what makes it stick out so much to me is not just like, the fact that you have a platform and you can go do what you want to do, but the culture of Twitch. For instance, the fact that when you finished your Twitch stream, you are encouraged to raid another channel, which could be someone or someone you don't, and basically like bring all your followers to that channel. And like when people do that, they're always like, oh my gosh, thank you so much for the raid. Like, who are you? What was your stream like? And like, it has a warmth to it.
People going out of their way to gift subs, to be kind for sure, but to gift paid subscriptions, not just getting them for themselves, but to, like, I think it was your channel. I was watching your stream, and then I'm just sitting there, I'm just enjoying. And then one of your followers was just gifted me a subscription to your channel for the month.
That's what they do.
I don't know who that is. They don't know who it was just part of the culture and community that you've already established, even as a relatively new streamer. You've been going for a couple months, right?
Maybe a month and a half, maybe 6 weeks. I'm not even sure, but it's not long at all. But here's the thing. That's not unique to me in any way. That is the culture of Twitch. And that's one of the things that I think makes it so remarkable is that, I got there and I was like, what's happening here? Like at first I had no idea what I was even looking at. I was like, what is this? What's a pog? Like, why are all these people like spamming all these emotes? And then it was like slowly, right? Like I kept hanging out because I enjoyed the music. And also a really good friend of mine, who I actually work with, who her husband is a streamer. And that's how I found streaming. That's how I found Twitch.
Yep. Yeah.
But before that, I was like, why would I want to watch someone play video games? That's boring.
I'm fascinated by all internet and influencer culture, and I am fascinated by the the multiple reasons why people would come to a stream, and I'm mostly operating from my own behavior as a very online person, but also like a pretty normal mainstream guy. Like I'm not deep in the weeds on a lot of this stuff. Yeah. And so what I'm fascinated by is, hey, there's a game I am psyched about or want to know about, and like the trailer and the marketing materials are not really explaining they're not really showing me the gameplay that I'm that I want to see.
Right.
So what do? Hey, I'm editing a podcast at work, or I'm checking in on emails. I'm doing things that require half of my brain or an audio part of I'll put on a Twitch stream on mute on a second monitor, and I will be aware of the game that's being played. And I don't know this streamer. I'm not really there for their personality. I'm not there for their skill or whatever. I am just checking out the game, and I find that really useful from a utility point of view. Then I am obsessed with the culture, the communities that streamers like, big time streamers, and also just getting started streamers like our friend Sky, like yourself, and I'm there. I'm like, okay, you guys are just getting started, and there's 20 people there, and they're all hanging out having a conversation, and I'm like, that's the coolest. It goes
to another level, which you may know about. So once again, stop me if in fact I'm telling you something but another piece of the Twitch puzzle is that many of the Twitch streamers have Discords. And I was like, oh, okay, everybody has a Discord. What's that about, right? So I go in Sky's, and then I go in a few other people's. And these Discords are kind of like, if you've used Discord, it's like a room with a bazillion little rooms in it, like a house with a bunch of tiny rooms, and you go in the video game room or whatever. Yeah. But everyone is so nice in those too. Like I'm in a few. And like a typical morning starts off with people in the community popping in and being like, hi guys, I hope everybody's doing really well. I hope you have a great day. Here's a picture of a flower growing in my yard. Here's a picture of my cat. That's it. And I'm just like, people are being so nice to each other here. Now, I'm not saying that Twitch is inherently nice, because I know that there are dicks on Twitch, but I'm just saying that the circles I've been in, I'm just shocked by, I guess, the purity of it. It's so wholesome
because it is a city. It contains multitudes. If I walk down the street and there's an asshole on my block, well, that's the asshole house. But if I walk down the street and visit my friend or my family and they're wonderful people, I'm going to be in there with like this idea that like, oh, Twitter is a toxic place, and like it has its problems. Oh, the Redditors are so it's like, well, it depends what subreddit you're in, depends what Discord server you're in. And
right. Exactly.
I'm in many Discord servers, and some of them are the small, beautiful places that you describe, where it's like, hey guys, here's that flower. And some are like, oh my God, there's 10,000 people doing, and I enjoy those two for different reasons. Again, or one example was when Animal Crossing: New Horizons captured all of our attention for 6 straight months of the pandemic, and we were all obsessed with it.
Thank you, Animal Crossing. You saved so much of my soul.
God bless. Before Nookazon as a website for trading items began to take shape, there were Discord servers that was like, hey, I got this blue couch. I want the red fireplace. And there were thousands of people just going, I got this. I want this. Hey, I want this. I need this. And and I just like would leave it open because I was like, oh my God, what if the cool thing that I want to get pops up, and then I could like meet someone and like fly to their island, and then I could get the thing. How it was almost like seeing the New York Stock Exchange on your web browser, and I just love
that's amazing.
love that shit.
But like, to me, that's kind of the same vibe, right? Like the same kind of, I don't know, like I say kindness, but it's just, I think wholesome is a really good word, because it seems like that's a word that, you know, has emerged for us in the culture. Like, I don't know how many years, but like, yeah, all of a sudden that's what people really want. People want to be kind of touched. They want to be like, aw.
But they want to be with people who understand what they're obsessed with. Like, I mean, and this is what we're going to be talking about. Is like, you know, the origin story of the show is that, you know, Colette and I are coworkers, and we have meetings about work that end up becoming chats about whatever we're playing, whatever video games we're playing. And because we're broken people, we're like, we need to turn this into content. This has to become, we have to monetize this. And here we are.
Yeah, here we are. Woohoo! Still in all, I have to say this though, and I'll just quickly, I've told you this personally, but I haven't said it on the podcast, so I'm going to. You know, it's now been, I don't know, 13 years, 12 years since Retroforce Go started. And I think that my most memorable moment from Retroforce Go was getting fan mail from a guy. And when I say fan mail, it was probably an email, you know, but like fan mail from a guy who was stationed in Iraq. And he did not divulge his details because he couldn't. But in short, he told us in this email that he was on an assignment that really scared him. And that when he was doing a part of the assignment that basically required him to stand guard, that he would listen with his, I don't know, iPod, like whatever there was at the time. He would listen with his iPod just tucked in his shirt pocket and his little earphone in. And he said that he was in that foreign country feeling so lost and so afraid, and that we were like friends in his ear. And like, that literally gives me like good chills to this day, because the idea that us just, you know, doing what you and I are doing right now, just going off about games and just being excited and being happy, helped someone that was in that kind of situation. Like, that's what I want to accomplish in life, is to do things like that for people.
Amen. That is why we do what we do, because we are, I've heard this said elsewhere, and I've said it occasionally, like, you're inside the ears. You're like inside people's bodies, and you're with them. And there's a lot of content on the internet. Hey, I'm going to Google something to watch a YouTube video of how do I do this? Hey, I need to send an email to my boss. Like, that is all stuff we do in our day. But then there's and then you could sit down to watch a Netflix movie, and that is a linear piece of media that you're like, I'm going to watch this story, or you could play a game. And then I get, my point is that there is just hanging out with people who are like you. And the thing I often think about is, if I go to school, or I go to work, or I visit my family, like, I have I have things in common with those people, and I have friends in common, and I have interests in common. But if I am playing, you know, Monster Hunter, nobody around me is playing that game. Right. So if I want to talk about that game with other people who are like as obsessed with, you know, upgrading armor as I am right now, they're not around me. So I need to go on the internet and talk to strangers, and that can be wonderful, but like, it's nice to find your people in other ways too, and that is what we're going to get into here.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more.
We're about to get into what we are currently playing, and I'm excited about the things that Colette has listed in our show notes here. So I'm going to let her start briefly. A lot of things that I make on the internet are they are scripted, they are edited, they are planned. This is not planned, so I'm going to say this aloud. The show is not going to be edited to any great extent. be mindful, Colette. This is our first episode of papers shuffling and bumping into your desk or microphone, only because those are normal human sounds that will be magnified by the compression that I will eventually put on this audio.
Yes.
So just be mindful of it.
Yes, for sure. And I do have papers on my desk, so I will definitely be mindful of that.
Are those your notes for the show? Or are they your taxes? What are you doing right now?
Well, since I have ADHD so bad, it's really difficult for me to just do one thing. So while I'm like having this extremely like happy time, like talking about these things with you, I'm also like putting down a layer of like black on the background of a painting I started earlier.
Ooh,
so
nice. Very nice.
Yeah. So, but it's weird, right? It's like, I used to feel really bad about this. Like, oh man, like I'm not able to pay attention. But the funny thing is, it actually helps me to pay attention.
Oh, absolutely.
And it helped me to learn that it's really typical for both kids and adults who have ADHD, ADD to, it helps them to focus if they can doodle or draw or paint or whatever. So now I do it, knowing that it can help me sharpen my focus. So
do not let me stop you or stand in your way. And I would like to see it when you're done.
Yes.
I'll make you jealous of, not of me, but of a colleague that I had who became an artist for the company that I worked for. He was like the guy who would draw the illustrations for all the news articles and whatever.
Oh, cool.
And like, he's a wonderful guy. And then he told me one time, like, yeah, like, I draw for a living. Like, he would sit at his desk and it was a media site. So he'd be drawing like, hey, we're covering, the Lord of the Rings movie. So he's drawing Gandalf. It's like, you're drawing Gandalf and Superman for a living. That's your job. Yep. But on top of that, dude could just put on headphones and listen to podcasts all day while he draws, because the drawing part of your brain doesn't require the word part of your brain, so he can do both. And I was like, God damn you, because I can't cut video or podcasts. I would love to listen to another podcast while I cut podcasts, because
I hear you. I totally hear you. Like I also cannot write or edit with listening to other words. That does not work. So I have to listen
and what about music with lyrics? Because I cannot do it.
No, the only thing I can listen to while doing any of those things is music without lyrics, which I do like a lot. I'm really into lately, especially like synth kind of drone stuff. I actually found a Twitcher who's doing something that, like, I don't even know how to put words to it. I'm just going to share it with you, but it's like magic and amazing and feels like flying through the universe in a bubble.
Nice.
And that's what I listen to.
It sounds like very good writing music.
It is
to me. I like that. And game music is also great. As a side note, I was listening to another podcast. It was the Retronauts podcast about, they were stack ranking by committee, the guests, all the Mega Man games, the mainline Mega Man games. And it was just a great conversation about the games, but interspersed was all the music. And holy shit, like, Capcom Mega Man music from, the mid 90s is unbelievable. And then I'm thinking about it being covered by a band, as you were describing. And yeah, hell yeah. I would like that.
We're going back to that. It probably won't be on podcasts or maybe it'll be the next podcast. Who knows? But I have a lot to share about that. But before I get lost in another tangent, I'm going to go back to what we're playing, because I do really want to talk about the two things that have been on my plate this week, and kind of like what they've put on my mind. Because for me, and I don't know about you, but I suspect that what I know of you from our friendship. Oh man,
Siri?
Yes,
who's that?
What I know of you from our friendship.
I didn't understand that.
You should just leave this in, and I'll just be like, Siri, I didn't fucking ask you anything.
I'm not cutting any of this.
God, I hate her. Okay. Anyway, so I'm gonna throw the phone across the room. I'm gonna throw it. So what I was going to say was that I suspect that, like me, you're a person who plays a game and enjoys it, but beyond the enjoyment of it, that you also about.
No, I do not enjoy. It is
no enjoyment.
It is a task to be done. No, of course.
I suspect that you think, and this is one of the reasons why I was excited to do this project with you, because I suspect that you think about more than just this is fun. I suspect you think about the mechanics, the story, the themes, the way it like intersperses into like, you know, our actual real lives. Maybe not all the time, right?
To a fault, and I know you're like possibly like this too, where it's like I should be having fun right now, but I'm too hung up on you know, the mechanic, the frame rate, the dialogue choice, the translate, whatever. It's a bad situation, but you know.
This is one of the reasons why I intersperse like the things I play with like totally mindless things that are fun, but like they don't, you know what I mean? They don't demand anything of me. So I would say that like the two games that I'm playing right now are perfect opposites of that on like the teeter totter. So the one left side is Silent Hill 2 Enhanced Edition. And if people are going, what is that? What is Enhanced Edition? It's actually a fan remake of the PS2 horror classic, which is one of my favorite games of all time. And I've seen it before. It's gone back and forth kind of across my radar a few times. I remember a friend telling me 5 or 6 years ago, oh, like someone's redoing like the Silent Hill games and like they look gorgeous and they're running in 1080p. But I didn't have a computer at the time that could run games. So late last year, you know, my husband's trying to decide what to get me for Christmas, and he's like, "I know what I'm going to get you. I'm going to get you like a bomb ass PC."
Yeah, and so you have welcome to the world of PC gaming. You are fairly new.
I'm so new.
Or did you or were you a PC player back in the day, or never? Only console, always console.
PC player. Oh my God, I'm going to really date myself now, Matt. PC player, starting out with text adventure games like Return to Zork. When I was a kid, and playing up to about, gosh, how long did I have a PC? I want to say that I was playing PC up to the time I was maybe 20 or so. The last one of the last games I remember playing on my still not very strong PC, mind you, because my parents bought it for me, was the Blade Runner role-playing game, which is really good.
I'm not even aware of it, but okay.
Yeah, it's really good, and it was just remastered. But I'm not gonna go off into that. Anyway,
briefly before you proceed, are you like a Sierra point and click fan from our childhood, or no? Were you in a different world?
No. That's definitely where I was. I was all about story-driven games, and you know. Obviously, right? I become a writer in adult life, but I was always obsessed with that from a really young age. And yeah, I cut my teeth on stuff like Zork and Maniac Mansion and the Infocom games and stuff like that. And you know, all that stuff has like a really fun place in my heart, right? But I never really used a PC for like games that made you go like, whoa, it looks so good. Like that wasn't the PC I had, you know, younger. And then when I decided to go over to Mac, it was probably about 13 or 14 years ago. And I'm a pretty aesthetic person. So I loved, you know, everything about what makes Mac.
Sure.
And I just thought, well, I play my games on console, you know, whatever. But when I got it really into VR last year, I started like seeing people playing games where they were using mixed reality. And I think like, you know, a little exclamation point, you know, the Metal Gear exclamation point, like went up over my head. And I was like, how can I do that? That's so cool. So, you know, I talked about it and I thought about it.
$3,000 later, you can too can do that as well.
I am sitting next to a blinking neon behemoth black box as we speak that does all those very things. So anyway, so to get back to Silent Hill 2 Enhanced Edition, PC gaming, of course, opens up all these doors. So I had not thought about. I tried to play. Actually, last Halloween, every October, my husband and I watch horror movies and play horror games all month, and we love it.
Nice.
So he was like, maybe I should try Silent Hill 2 this year. And I was like, well, you know, it's always been one of my favorite games. I'd love to see what you think of it, right?
He had never played it.
Nope, he'd never played it, and he picked up the HD remaster, which is hot garbage, and he was like, I kind of can't play this. Like it's the tank controls are really tough and it just doesn't feel like, and it looked old. And like this little part of my heart, like a crack appeared in it. I was like, I love this game so much, and it is so sad to me, but I have to admit that even with a remaster, it just feels old, right?
What about okay, you have to educate me a little bit here, because I never owned a PlayStation, any iteration of it. And I'm not into horror games. So what year is Silent Hill 2. What year are we talking? What system? And then you're talking about an HD remaster, but when you say remaster, is it like, hey, we just bumped up the fidelity, or did they actually manipulate the game in some way to update it?
Let me give you a few road signs. So Silent Hill 2 is a PS2 game. I could not tell you the year of release, but it's 2000 something, right?
And
2003,
PS2.
whatever.
No, that gives me a place to go from. That's
something
good.
like that. So it is a beloved series. There have been a whole bunch of entries, but the first 4 were made by a developing team called Team Silent that was out of Japan, and that did twisted, amazing, like provoking work. And then they walked away from the franchise. Konami tried to keep it going. That didn't really work out so well.
I was going to say it's Konami Publishing. I don't know why my brain went to Capcom. Maybe because I was mentioning it earlier, but no, it's Konami Publishing. But it was their own team, as an independent team that made the series.
Right. Yes. And that's the thing. They, after Team Silent stepped away from the Silent Hill series after 4, they were like, well, we have the successful franchise. We're going to keep doing it. And they had a bunch of other studios come in and try their hand, but no one quite nailed what made Silent Hill after that. Even though it was like, oh, it has the fog and it has the crazy monsters. But like, those weren't the things that made Silent Hill what it is to me.
And this is, you mentioned monsters, so I'm assuming this is not like slow psychological terror or whatever. It is like monster horror, but is it jump scare? Is it
it is
slower than that?
Psychological terror, I would say. Okay. Psychological dread is maybe a good way to put it. So here's another road sign. Silent Hill and Resident Evil pretty much come out around the same time. Okay. Both are thought of as survival horror, but Resident Evil is like action centric survival horror, and then Silent Hill is like run away from the bad guys horror because you're just a regular person and you don't have machine guns or anything. You are just trying to survive. Yeah. So one was offensive and one was defensive, and Silent Hill at its heart, I still think, is a defensive kind of game. But is stealth an important factor here? No, not really. No. It's really very much I'm just a regular dweeby guy or girl. In one of them, it's a girl, like running away from monsters, trying to hide, trying to get around things, and basically solving puzzles and like figuring out how to navigate Silent Hill, which is a town where like sometimes you walk to the end of a street and like the earth just ends and the road just cracks off and there's nothing there. So a very supernatural setting. Yes. Yeah. And, I've loved horror since I've probably been about 10 years old. So this is very my stuff. But so to go back to the whole enhanced edition thing. Yeah. So Silent Hill 2 and 3 were re-released in HD. I believe it was on PS3 on the same disc. Mm-hmm. And it was a garbage remake. Absolutely garbage. Like they decided to change out the voice actors for some reason. That caused a huge uprising in the community. People hated that. It was just really sloppy. Like, I mean, there's lots of roundup videos of why it was so bad, but it was bad. And that's been the only way to play those beloved early games that were made by Team Silent, Silent Hill 1 through 4. Mm-hmm. That was really it. I mean, even today, like you can't go and buy a greatest hits, Silent Hill 2 and play it on your PS5. Like that's not going to happen. No. And back in the PS3 days, emulating a PS2 on a PC was probably not really such a great endeavor. No. Definitely not. That doesn't track. Today, you could probably play this on your phone and have a great time. You know what I mean? Yeah, for real. You probably could. But I mean, yeah. So it was one of those things, right? Like as a longtime fan of this series, and also, I think it was just a couple of years ago that it looked like Kojima was going to take over Silent Hill, and he did a trailer with Norman Reedus in it called Silent Hills, and like. My little circle. Sounds familiar. Oh my God. Freaked my little circle of the internet was having a fucking meltdown. Like Kojima and Silent Hill, and then for whatever reason it got canned, and no one knows why.
No one knows why. Interesting.
Okay, so here's the backstory, right? So up to the moment, it's very exciting to me and also really impressive that a group of fans, a collective who have been working on this restoration of Silent Hill 2, it's called Enhanced Edition, for years. They still update it. They still do stuff to it regularly.
I love this.
I know, because it's literally like, this is their baby. This is their love letter to this series. And you can tell, because not only does playing it, this enhanced edition, which by the way is completely free, as long as you own the original Silent Hill 2 in some form, your disc, you bought it for PC, whatever, you can play this game and it's free.
Mm-hmm.
So that impresses me even more because, of course they can't charge for it because it's not their intellectual property, but it's just still impressive.
But what my immediate question for you, and perhaps you will address it, is what is the publisher or developer's stance on this? Because some are super chill and some will send the lawyers out immediately. And so what's been going on?
The lawyers would go out, I think, but for whatever reason, they have not. See, the enhanced edition doesn't change the content in any way. All it does is like clean it up and make it better. It basically is like restoring a classic car, in my opinion.
But wait, so how do you play it? What system? On PC?
So yeah, on PC only. And the way that I set it up was I have had for quite a long time, there was a PC version of Silent Hill 2. Okay. So I've had that and, kept it in my stuff for many, many, many years. And so as long as you have a version of Silent Hill 2, a physical version, or you can, rip it onto your computer or whatever, you can download the enhanced edition, and it'll basically.
So it is essentially a mod that is modifying the original. Meaning, I don't own this game in any digital or physical way, so I cannot download this enhanced version and play it. Is that what you're saying?
Correct. You have to have the original game, and I mean,
very interesting.
If you wanted to look on the internet for like an emulator, like that would be your way around it.
I could pull down the ROM and then play the ROM as whatever. But okay, this is actually, I am very intrigued by a lot of these fan-made things, and can't remember one made like this where it runs like on top of the original game.
Yeah, because I'm sure there must be something. I just don't know of it.
For sure. I casually am aware of, I wouldn't say follow, but whenever it pops up, I'm like, oh yeah, hundreds of people are still remaking the Elder Scrolls Morrowind in the Skyrim engine, and here's the latest update. But I guess maybe I'm answering my own question. You need to own Skyrim and then install the mod, which is the Morrowind mod, to run it in. It's kind of reversed. You're playing the newer game and running the older game inside. But yeah, okay, cool.
Yeah,
that's very cool.
It's amazing. It really is.
And it runs great. Like it plays as well as you remember, but it's better now and it's
Matt,
enhanced.
It's never played this well ever. The original game never played this well or looked this nice ever.
It's amazing.
Which is kind of cool, right? Because, and this is a point I really wanted to hit on. Silent Hill 2 to me is such a standout game because, and especially in the genre of horror, because the story. And it's been out for a long enough time that I feel okay just like straight spoiling this game. Like, you know what? If you didn't play it by the way, this is its 20th birthday this year. So if you didn't play it in the last 20 years, like, fuck you.
I have not. You're about to spoil it for me. And I'm okay with it because I probably, unless you are telling me you think I should go and play it.
I don't think it's your type of game, but I do think that you're going to really enjoy what I'm about to say.
Go for it.
Silent Hill 2 to me stands out and has stood out for so long because the story is about a man, and it's a great like teaser, like that first 5 minutes where you're like, what is happening?
Mm-hmm.
It's a man. He shows up in like a woodsy looking town, and his voiceover says, I got a letter from my wife. And she says, I want you to meet me in Silent Hill at our special place. But she died years ago. But here I am.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, like, how could you not be like, what the hell is going on?
Perfect setup. Perfect start.
So James is his name. He makes his way down into Silent Hill. And, from the word go, shit is crazy. There's fog everywhere. Mannequins that have no heads are attacking each other. He's seeing stuff. He's like, it's just a complete surreal, like, as you can see, I'm like at a loss for words. Mm-hmm. But so the entire game, James is like, well, I really want to find my wife, right? And he ends up running into this woman who looks just like his wife, but she's dressed like a prostitute. And as the game goes on, all these little things start to happen around James that you're like, none of this quite makes sense, right? And through like the whole like passage of the game, I think you're thinking, well, is he going to find her? Is he like, what, like when the woman shows up who looks just like his wife, but is dressed, the way she's dressed, I think you start like going, oh, there's something more going on here. Like what's going on here?
Something more, of course, but also, what do you call it in literature? The non-credible narrator of like the person telling you the story who you think is like the voice of the story turns out, untrustworthy, meaning the world is correct, but he is wrong or something like that, or he's imagining things, right? I mean, I'm sure there's more to it. That's what I would guess. If I was playing this game and reached that point that you were describing, I'd be like, wait a minute, this guy is crazy, or this guy is, thinking about things wrong or misremembering or has amnesia or whatever.
Right. Well, that could not be better put because in the last, I would say 20% of the game, James remembers that he murdered his wife because she was so sick with whatever disease. It looks like cancer, but they never tell you what it is. And he has completely blocked it out.
Yeah,
so then at that point, you kind of get to have this. You kind of look back at the entire game and realize that you've seen it through the lens of trauma, which to me is so incredibly impressive 20 years later because all of the things that he sees, this is the game that the famous Pyramid Head debuts, which I can't even begin to tell you the number of conversations on the internet about how like Pyramid Head like represents James' sexuality. And like there's a scene where like Pyramid Head is like doing something that definitely looks like rape to like a mannequin. Several mannequins actually. And like there's moments like that and you're like, what does that mean? And then once you realize that you have been with the unreliable narrator the entire game and that he killed his own wife and that he didn't remember it anymore because he had blocked it out, you kind of look back at all these really interesting threads of like what trauma looks like from a person's perspective. And to me, that was incredibly fascinating 20 years ago. Now that I'm 20 years older, it's probably 10 times as much. It's really a very elegant execution of really multi-layered emotions and issues. And I think that people are probably still looking at it and thinking about what all those things mean. So that impresses the hell out of me.
I was hoping you'd say that. Because those themes in a PS2 era game,
right?
Quite groundbreaking. But then sometimes you look back and you're like, oh, okay, cool ideas here, but just this doesn't hold up. That's not as impactful as it was when I was a teenager, 20 something, whatever.
It still blows my mind, quite honestly, because I mean, we're talking about a time period where, and you may remember this. There was a game that was one of the first, I guess, quote unquote, serious topic games that was called That Dragon Cancer. I think it was about 13, 14 years ago. But
is it that old? I feel like it was more recent than that. Holy
but I remember when that came out and I went, oh my gosh, the games as art argument might actually have real weight now because games like that were coming out, games like Journey were coming out, which were like, following the cycle of birth, life, and death, like all this really deep shit. And you're just like, wow, this is so cool to see games, which I think have always been art in their own way, regardless.
They are always art.
Right.
They have always been art, carving a chess piece and making it beautiful, or the symmetry of a board or whatever is art. Like it's all media and it's all art. And sometimes you're just jumping on a Goomba and sometimes you're talking about the trauma of cancer.
Right. But it's all art. Right. I think as a person who grew up in an era where video games were ridiculed and I was made fun of for liking them for quite some time as a young adult, like, teenage 20s, like games were not cool then and they're cool now for whatever reason. So I think for me, it was just like seeing them kind of evolve and mature into a different type of like commentary on what it is to be human. I think that was like really meaningful for me because a part of me was like, see, it is good media. What I love does matter. And like, that was something that I needed people to know, I think, Yeah.
Same experience. I have no memory of being ridiculed or anything like I don't know. I didn't encounter like the nerd, whatever stereotype. And maybe I'm sure a big part of that was because I'm a dude and we all just liked dude video games, and maybe it was different for girls growing up. I'm sure that's a factor. But I often think about, I don't remember where I read this or heard this, but someone commented and said, video games as an art form are only as old as we are. Like they only began in the 70s, and we grew up with them and have seen them since the beginning of them.
That's right.
And they have finally become recognized as the art form that they have always been. And then I often think about like, hey, in the 1800s or whenever the novel came out, the novel as a concept, as a piece of literature, was shit on. It was deemed the shittiest piece of shit you could imagine because it wasn't a play, and it wasn't, and it's a longer work. It was a short piece of fiction that was for trash. It was a trashy thing to read or consume or be excited about.
I had no idea.
I'm sure I'm misstating the century or the year or whatever. But whenever the novel as a form, as a crystallized form came on the scene, it was not welcome. And now the novel is the default piece of literature that we teach to every child in every school around the world. And we are teaching game design. We are teaching game theory and mechanics and whatever and art in schools. Not just like, hey, I want to be a game designer. Kids are attending school inside Minecraft today in the 21st century.
God, it just gives me the chills, the happy chills. Really, it does. It really does. I mean, to be honest, a lot of gaming for me was a bit lonely as a kid. I was an only child. I didn't really have a lot of people to play games with, so it was like very much a solo activity for me. But honestly, like, looking around now and looking like if I had kids, like I would be definitely playing games with my kids. And I think about what kind of experiences, our kids are having now with games versus like what I had when I was a kid. And it just excites me to no end.
As a parent and as like an old person, there is this innate thing in all of us to want to show your kids the games and the books and the movies that you loved as a kid. And it's not just us, it's every generation wants to go back and say, hey, back in my day, or you should understand what this art was like and how small or limiting or early it was, so that you can appreciate what this art is today.
Right,
and you can apply this to books, movies, games, anything. Yeah. And now kids are living. So that has always been a generational thing, and now kids are living in this hyper fast, hyper nostalgic culture where I'm showing my kids The Legend of Zelda, but they're also playing Breath of the Wild, and those are connected.
Wild.
But
what's that like?
It is wonderful, and they appreciate it because they're young, and so they in some ways have no choice, but B, they're not like, okay, Dad, I'm going to go out with my friends, and that will happen eventually. But I'm also interested in the hyper, like, remix nostalgia culture of like, hey, the movies and kids shows that you are watching as a kid made for kids in 2021 are like they watch Wreck-It Ralph, which is a fantastic Disney animated movie. Both movies are really, really good. Perhaps you've seen them. I don't know if
I have.
and
yes, they're awesome.
There's, we don't have to get into it, but all of the cultural references are references to video games from 80s, not all of them, but 80s arcades, 90s gaming culture. And so they are consuming media with no context for the media that came before.
Yeah. God,
and it's fine. They don't care. They're just living their lives. But I don't know. I think it's a little, that's not brand new, but it is at a speed today that is a lot faster. There's a lot more. It's not a worry. It's not a concern. It's just I am very fascinated by that.
Yeah, no, I get it. And I think about that too. Sometimes I really regret that I'm always a person who is like, I'm like an animal parent, not a cat parent. Like, I mean, sorry, not a baby parent. Like, I always knew like I didn't want kids. I just wanted to have like a bevy of animals. But sometimes I regret that, if only because I wish that I could show my kids games, like I wish I could play games with them. So I always kind of have to live vicariously through parents that are playing games with their children.
Do you have any? Oh no, you said you're an only child, but maybe your husband has nieces and nephews in the mix, or anything like that.
So I do too. But and they are gamers. One of them is more gamer than the other, but they are. So that has been fun. I have played Animal Crossing with them.
Yeah. My daughter is 8 now. Recently turned 8, and she like being able to read. And being able to read extremely well. Like when you're 5, okay, you're figuring stuff out. But now she reads like a freaking adult now. So she can play any game that I can play. Yep. And that is so cool. And so she's starting to dabble in virtual worlds. There's like an educational iPad game. It's called Adventure Academy. And you have to learn. You have to do like little lessons and watch little videos and read little books, which she enjoys anyway. And then you earn points to then spend on the house that you want to build in the game. And then you get a pet, and then and I'm like, yeah, I want the pets too, because that's what I grind for in all the games that I want to play. All the mechanics that we love and get hooked on are in an educational setting. And I see her brain. She's like, Daddy, if I can get to level 10, I can go to the dock, and that's where I can get fish and everything. And I'm like, girl, do it. It's great.
I love it.
It's so great.
It's so awesome. Yeah, I absolutely love that. So yes, anyway, went quite a ways off on that. But the other thing I'm playing, I'm probably going to keep it a bit short because it's nowhere near as complex as my memories of Silent Hill 2. It's called Magic Legends. I found out about it about 2 weeks ago, and it is good old-fashioned Magic the Gathering. But I think the thing that I love the most about it is that it's basically like if Diablo and Magic had a baby. And Diablo is one of my like long time like where we were talking about like, oh, games that really move us and make this big like impact on us. And then you have games where you're just like, I want to kill, and like that's Diablo. Like sometimes I'm just like, my husband has this joke. Like I'll be like, man, I had a rough day at work or whatever, and like he'll put his hand on my shoulder and go, do you need to kill, sweetie? And I'm like, yeah, I think I might need to kill. And so then he's like, maybe you should go play Pistol Whip and like, do some killing or whatever. And I do, and it feels better. So yeah, Magic, I mean, it's not quite as killing right off the get-go like Diablo is, for instance. But the way it feels a lot like that kind of top-down Diablo, except much nicer and more modern. Your cards are your attacks and spells. So let's say you have an attack and you use it. It goes away because it's a card. So you play the card.
You play the card. Got it.
So that's pretty fun. Is it super, super unique? No, like, of course not. It's that itch. It's that feeling of like, oh, it's like I'm playing Diablo, but you're not, you're playing Magic, and you've probably played Magic or seen people play Magic. So, and it's free to play, which is like a thing that at one time to me meant like, oh, this game is garbage. And now is like, Holy shit, there's some
No.
really good free-to-play games in the world now, you know?
Ethical, good free-to-play games are my jam in 2020, 2021. We can do some episodes about that, but I have quite a few questions for you about Legends, but please proceed.
Yeah, no, I mean, honestly, that's kind of it, because like it doesn't, like I said, it's not anything like, Silent Hill is like this like deeply layered thing for me. It's not just a horror game or a jump scare game or whatever, right? And then you have something like this, which is like not going to make me do any deep thinking at all, but it's like a really, really enjoyable thing anyway.
Story that matters, and that might be a linear story or that might be a branching complicated thing, but that is one headspace,
right?
And then there's that other I just want to kill things headspace, and I'm right there with you. But then I'm really, I don't know what it is, if it's the pandemic or the stuck at home kind of stuff, but like I want to grind. I want to make slow but certain progress, and I want numbers to go up, and I want strength to go higher, and maybe I'm going to fail at a mission, or maybe I'm going to not get that the most resources on this run, but I'm going to get some, and I'm going to go back again, because I'm not interested in doing anything in my real life. I want to just be here doing this thing over and over. So that's a topic for another episode. My question about Magic Legends is, do you play Magic the Gathering? How familiar were you with those mechanics and that game specifically, and how does that impact your enjoyment or understanding of this top-down action RPG? Which I get how these are intertwined, but also like Magic the Gathering is arguably the deepest rabbit hole you could go down.
It's incredibly
deep. And this doesn't
deep.
seem like that. This Legends does not seem like that, but maybe I'm wrong.
Well, I haven't gotten super far, so I can say that like it's only from the limited perspective of someone who's, I think, level like 8 or 9 or something like that. But like, okay, so to answer the first question, I played Magic when the first ever set came out.
Really?
Yes, I am a very old school Magic player that stopped playing. Do you
have any of those cards? Do you own them?
Matt, let me freaking tell you. I think I gave them to someone because I was like, oh, I'm not into it anymore. I gave away tens of thousands of dollars of cards.
What I was about to ask you.
It is horrible. It's I have one other story about how I had the first issue of Sandman and I cut it up and put it on an envelope to one of my pen pals. And that one's bad, but it's not as bad as this one. This one is so bad. And I'm just like, oh God, like it kills me. So yes, that is my history with that, right? I used to go to the coffee house that was like in New Orleans where I used to hang out and like play people because Magic was so big at that time. And people would just like hang out at this coffee house. Yeah. Like in the French Quarter. And I used to go there and like play guys and beat people all the time. And I'd beat these guys and they would just like look at me like, I hate you.
Okay. So when this game came on the scene, there was something about it that was attractive to me. I was like, oh, wait, because you could have a deck, but my deck could be different. And we could build these differently. And all these interactions with like, oh, wow. But I never got into it because there really was not, like, I'm sure I could get the cards if I wanted, but there was no like game store. There was no coffee house where I was, and nobody I knew played it,
and you had to have people to play it with to make it what it is. You had to
have a community around you. So like, what was I going to do? Build a deck and look at pretty cards? Like maybe, but
you have to play with people. And they've solved that to a degree, right? Like, I mean, Magic is now so universal and so old. My God. I mean, like it's been around for so long. And the fact that they continue to reinvent it over and over and over impresses me.
Yeah.
I will say, interestingly enough, the thing that got me to stop playing was that I thought it got too complicated.
Okay.
But a lot of other people that play Magic, that's what they love about it most. My husband's
Yep.
also a Magic player. And the more complex he can make his game, the more tokens and creatures stacked on creatures with like stuff on top of it that you can accentuate and like boost your creatures with. Like he's all about that. And for me, I like a core game that's fairly simple. This is why I like Diablo probably because it's fairly simple, right? And also to go back to ADHD for a minute, like I can't remember a lot of things. So if it's like 85 things, forget it.
Well, so this is a very urgent question that I have for you and maybe for Patrick as well. Maybe you have to call him on the phone separately. I recently have really, really been enjoying and getting into Magic Arena, which is
nice.
a PC and mobile free to play, as we were just discussing, full version of Magic. Very ethical. You win gold by winning matches or completing different quests, which you then spend on packs, and then of course you can buy a premium currency to get more packs. But like I have built a fairly reliable competitive deck in this game, and I love it. But as I'm playing, and it's a huge learning curve that I really enjoyed climbing over. But what blows my mind is I'm playing decks and cards that I have been playing for months and months and months. I know how my deck works. I'm seeing a lot of other cards in the mix, and I'm playing a lot of different opponents. And still, months later, I'm like, okay, I'm going to do this, and my creature's going to attack, and then this is going to happen, and the cards interact in a way that is so deep and so unexpected that I'm like, cool. Thank God there's a fucking video game here, because if I was playing paper, I would not understand all the. Let me rephrase this. How the hell do paper players keep track of what's going on if they don't have a computer system telling you, okay, this card does this card does this, okay, this adds a token here, blah, blah, blah. Because I'm floored constantly by the complexity.
Right. And you don't even have ADHD. So it's like, I'm not glad it's confusing, but like, I'm glad to hear that I'm not the only one that's like, I can't remember all that.
But I'm asking, like, I would be doing a strategy and doing a thing, and I'd be leaving like 20 hit points on the board because I forgot to put a token on something. Like, I would like to watch a paper match and see what these people are doing, because I don't understand how any human mind could keep track of this game if it was not. Because like when you're playing Diablo, I mean, we're saying, oh, it's a stupid game. It's just a kill game. But like, there are dice rolls and stat points and armor, whatever, that are being calculated 1,000 times a second.
Yep.
But you don't have to calculate them. You're just pressing A. But there's a game underneath there that's doing a thing. Mm-hmm. And in Magic, there's no computer doing it for you. You got to do it all yourself. And I can't get my head around it.
Yeah, I get it. I totally get that. And like, I watch Patrick play. We have a couple other friends that play, and like sometimes they'll play, and I'm not going to lie, Matt, I wanted to get back into it. I wanted to be like, oh yeah, like I'm an old school badass and I'm going to come back. And it was too much to keep up with. So I couldn't. Yeah. So like, as I'm playing now with Magic Legends, I'm kind of like, I wonder if it's going to get to the point where it's that complicated, or if it does, will it be managed in a way that makes it doable for me, you know? So I mean, I'll have to report back and like and tell you.
If you're enjoying Legends, then enjoy Legends. But honestly, as a true, real old school Magic player, you who is saying, but hey, the game is gotten away from me. Arena is, if you want to play, let me back up. If you want this in your life, Arena is the answer, because it solves you're getting to play the full Magic game and you're getting all of that stuff, but you don't have to do that crazy work.
Right. You know,
and the
I've
matches
never
are
tried
so fast. To answer me this, if you're playing paper or Patrick's playing paper and you're doing all these calculations, matches must last like 30 minutes an hour or whatever.
Sometimes. Yeah, sometimes they do. It depends. So, like, let's just say, and I'll try to keep this brief, but like, let's just say one person's approach is that they have some really big creatures that they want to get out on the board. So, like, maybe their approach is, well, I'm going to load my deck with all these like 1/1 creatures that are going to seem like they're just bullshit. But like, while I'm getting them out, I'm also getting lands out. So, I'm going to build up the amount of lands that I have. And then, like, while my opponent is busy killing all my 1/1s, I'm going to save up enough to bring out this, like, 10/10 behemoth that breathes ice and is going to literally like, like vaporize anything that it breathes on. Right. And like, that's okay. like I get where, you're going with that kind of strategy. So that's one kind of player. Right. And like, by the time that big creature comes out, everything's going to die. And then you have like people who don't play like that. They, like, I don't know. There's just so many different, I guess what I'm getting at is there's so many different types of strategies about the ways people play Magic that, it could last hours or it could last 20 minutes, depending on the type of person you're playing it with.
But in Arena, no matter who you're playing, and I've encountered many very fascinating deck structures that I don't fully comprehend, but I'm encountering players that's like, hey, my creature is going to beat your creature and we're going to fight and we're going to do that damage. And then this other player is like, I got no creatures. I'm just going to mill your fucking deck until you're out of cards and there's nothing you can do about it. And I'm like,
that's the thing.
Holy shit, that's a strategy.
Yeah, that's their strategy. Or like, it's just amazing. Like, I will say this. I think one of the most fascinating things about Magic is all of the different ways people have figured out how to play it. Because I'll be 100% honest, I never played it in any more complicated way other than I'm going to get my lands out, I'm going to get my creatures and spells out, and that's how I'm going to kill you. That was it.
Yeah. Yep.
Never more complicated than that. And you know what? That's fine.
That's
the
fine.
kind of player I am.
If you have a strong deck where the deck is what do you call it? There's synergies, right? Your sorceries or your lands are feeding your creatures properly. Then great. You've got a strong deck. I guess my overarching point for you, if you want to dip back in, is that this crazy complexity is boiled down to 10-minute match or less, because everything's there for you. So you're just you read the card and you're like, okay, play it, bam, 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 calculations done. Okay, next turn. You don't have to get a token, put this out. And I can't fathom another way to play it, but it's wonderful. But then when you get caught in those crazy loops, there was one, my son really likes this game. He's almost 5. He's 4. He's going to turn 5 this week. And I am thrilled that he is like, he can't read, but he understands the like super basic level mechanics of the most complicated card game ever made. Wow. And I'm like, so he watches me play on my phone. And so most games are whiz bang, quick match. And then sometimes you get in these fantastic loops where like, I had a total shit hand and nothing's working and I can't get my creatures out, but I have one card that like whenever a creature attacks me, it deals damage to the opponent and gains life for me. So this player has literally 10 creatures on the board, but can't do shit with them because I have this one enchantment sitting on the side. And I'm like, I've lost this match. I cannot win. But this game has gone on for 30 minutes because I can't be attacked because he will die. This player will die. And I'm like, Magic is the coolest. Yeah. It's the coolest game.
It's an incredible game. It really is. And I'm actually really happy to hear that that you have also been playing it and getting a lot out of it. And yeah, you and Patrick probably should connect because he really loves Magic too. And I know that he is also playing. Did you say it's Arena Magic?
It's called Arena, which is the mobile and PC version. And like he can just lay in bed and play 5 games of Magic. Like if you love Magic, how could you not be playing this? I'm sure he must be playing it, right?
Yeah, he is. I mean, well, he also has PC overwhelm where like you get a PC and then you realize that you can literally buy like hundreds of games for like $40. You're like, I just spent $40 and I have 76 games. Like, what do I do?
What do I do?
Right. So yeah, like he has, but he's also played all these other things because he's been so distracted. But that said, like we do have like a big chest of our cards, and none of them are my old cards, of course, but we have like a lot of cards.
That's
and he
fun.
does still really enjoy like manually playing.
Yeah, I believe it. I get it.
It has a certain appeal, I will say. And like, of course, since that's how I started, like, yeah, there's something fun about sitting down with your deck. But anyway, we could go on and on and on about that.
Hey, well, so Legends is scratching the Diablo itch. Well, my final question for you is, we're waiting for Diablo 4. I bounced off of 3 really hard. I found it to be very... I get the story. I'm not playing Diablo for the story, but like the beginnings of that game were like, I'm just blasting through enemies. There's no challenge. I'm just hitting A. And I know that there's a grind here somewhere.
But where is
the grind was like, you grind for armor to get better armor. And then that gives you better armor. And I was like, I get it. I truly, deeply understand this, but I could, as a grind lover, I could not find the loop in Diablo 3.
Right. No, I get that. And I also, as a person who, like, when Diablo 3, the day Diablo 3 was released, I was literally like panting in front of a computer, like waiting for that download to start. Like, I was so excited.
I believe it.
I also, like, don't really understand clearly what it was that, like, I didn't love as much as I loved Diablo 2. But I tell you what, Diablo 2 is getting a remake, and I am extremely excited about that. And also, Diablo 4 looks dark as fuck, and I am also really into that.
Yeah, it's looking real good. And I mean, maybe they fixed Diablo 3. Like, all the problems and all the auction house stuff and everything was problematic in the beginning of the PC release. Like, I've only touched it on Switch. And like you, I was like, oh, I can just kill things in bed? Great. Let's go Diablo 3. And could not find it. Could not find the groove.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I totally hear you. Well,
so does Legends feel good, or are you just still figuring it out?
I think I'm still figuring it out, but so far to me, it feels good enough that it is scratching that itch of like, oh, I'm looking forward to going back and getting a little further. And to me, that's, as a gamer constantly overwhelmed by options, that's enough for me. You know? So I will report back, but I am going to play more. Please do.
I feel like I've been in a bit of a rut lately where a lot of things I've been dabbling in have not pulled me back. So I know what you mean when you say that, and I'm glad you're feeling that pull for this one. And it's in beta. It's still early. Like, you're still, you're in there early.
Very early, definitely. So yeah, I think it'll be interesting. But I feel like I have literally talked about what I'm playing for 1 straight hour.
That's what we're here to do. This is the point of this show.
But let's talk about what you're playing.
As I said, I was been trying to find the thing. As someone who likes to get obsessed with, I don't like playing a lot of games at the same time. I like being obsessed with one thing if I can. Or it'll be like one PC thing and then a Switch thing, and that'll be the jam.
I'm the exact same way.
So you understand what I'm saying.
I do.
Got off of a very heavy binge, like heroin addiction binge of Star Wars Squadrons, which I highly recommend. I just goddamn love it so much. And even just thinking about it, I'm like, I should go back and
You're like, maybe I'll go play that tonight.
Maybe I'll go play that tonight, but I really shouldn't, because I'm playing other things now, including Loop Hero. We chatted about this briefly, maybe at work or something. Other folks in our circles were playing it. Have you dabbled in Loop Hero at all? Have you seen it?
I have seen it. I was so Loop Hero started to cross my radar around the time that I was winding down my 200 and some odd like Hades hours or whatever.
Oh yeah.
And I spent so long, and that was my itch, right? So I spent so long in that like happy place. And then as I was coming out, Loop Hero was starting to surface, and I was like, okay, like what exactly is going on with this game? And one thing I love is when I see games and I can't explain what I'm looking at. Like, I'm like,
totally.
what am I? Yeah, because I'm always piqued by, that my interest is like seeing something done that's completely different, and like, is Loop Hero completely different? I mean, I don't know. I haven't played it. I can't say. But what it looks like to me is that it's like bits and pieces of different formulas that I really enjoy.
Yes,
You know?
it absolutely is. And if I'll say this, like if you have put in your 200 hours with Hades, maybe you want to take a break from roguelites because that's a lot of roguelites,
Right,
and this is
right.
one. It's very different, but I feel like I need the palate cleanser occasionally when I go really really hard
For
on a game.
For sure. Yeah. And I think that's the reason why I'm not like I really want to play Persona 5 Strikers, and I'm still thinking about it,
Sure.
but like I'm kind of having that like, let me chill and not be like crack addicted to a game for like a minute.
for 1 minute, and then
and then I'll just get back to it. But
and then we'll get
later.
back into that crack. Yeah, exactly. Correct. First of all, like it's Devolver is the publisher, and they whatever tweeted a trailer or whatever, and I was like, okay, this like very dark gothic pixel art aesthetic, and the trail and this very 8-bit NES style music, and just that alone was like mesmerizing. I was like, what?
Totally.
I don't even know. Like you said, not really sure what this game is. Okay, vaguely like run based, whatever. Need it because it looks so cool, and Devolver really doesn't put out shit. They're always putting out good stuff.
Yep.
And then people were like, oh yeah, it's a deck builder roguelite, and I was like, oh, okay, yeah, I've been playing Magic, and I like the idea of deck building, whatever. It's really not that. It's not that at all. It is a run-based roguelite where you are rebuilding the world as you do each run.
Nice.
And there's a loose story where there's like this evil lich has vaporized the world, and you somehow are still alive, and you're encountering characters and people, but the world is sort of amorphous. It's sort of in darkness, and you are rebuilding the world by playing these cards. And they're not really, I guess they're cards, but your hero, your character, goes around in a loop automatically over and over again. You start at a campsite, you go around the loop, and you encounter slimes and spiders and whatever. And the battles are fought automatically. So that was the other thing that people kept saying, like, oh, it's an idle battler. And it is, but it's also definitely not. So your character encounters a slime, it automatically fights, and you can pause the action to decide, hey, the last slime dropped a new armor and it has slightly more hit points, so I'm going to add that armor, I'm going to change my weapon, and then the battle will automatically take place, and then the loop continues. And then you can pause the loop at any time to play one of the cards that randomly drops. So you have a deck of cards that have the potential to drop, and then it drops mountains, meadows, villages, whatever. And you start placing these on the board, and they fill in the landscape. They dot the landscape around you, which it looks pretty, but creating the landscape isn't really that important. It's more about when I place a mountain, it increases the maximum hit points of my character. When I place a meadow, it increases the amount of hit points I get back at the beginning of each day. So there's two like time-based mechanics. One is each loop, you rest at the campsite and you get hit points back and you replenish. Okay. And then each day, which ticks by in quote unquote real time, not real time like a real day, but like an actual amount of time, you then replenish. Then something happens. So like a spider will spawn at each day, or you'll regain hit points after each day, or whatever. And so you're placing the cards on the map to recreate the world around the loop, but you're placing them strategically, because if you put the mountain and the meadow side by side, the meadow becomes a blooming meadow, which makes you gain 3 hit points each day instead of 2.
Wow.
And what starts to happen is the loop goes around and around, but the monsters get stronger on each loop. So you are trying to keep your health regen and your stats and your gear slightly ahead of the monsters so that you don't die. And you're collecting resources as you go around the loop, here's where it actually starts scratching the itch for me. you're collecting resources as you go around the loop. If you die on the loop, you forfeit most of the resources. You take 30% back. If you make it to the camp one more time around the loop, you can say, I'm out of here. This is getting too crazy. Or you can say, you know what? I'm going to go around again because I want more stone. I want more wood. I want more orbs or whatever you're trying to collect.
Wow.
When you take the resources back, you are building your camp in order to have more successful runs. So the camp has, a farm where you're generating more food. You have a potion, a healer hut or whatever, where you can then on your next run, you can take healing flasks, which gives you a little bit more of an edge on the next run. Then there are boss mechanics where as you place cards, you face bosses in those runs. And then if you beat the bosses, you can graduate to the next level. And there are more layers of progression on top of that.
But is that anywhere near as like absolutely addictive as it sounds?
It is super addictive because for all the reasons you would expect, but it's also really cool because you can set it. There's two additional important things that I want to mention. Because the battles happen automatically, if you're looking at the board and you're like, all right, this is just a slime and a spider and a rat, like I can handle these, but I know my character is in good shape because of all the gear that they have. You can just hit go and walk away from your computer and wash a dish, and you'll go around the loop because you know what's up.
Right.
And in that way, it becomes a bit of an idle game. However, if it's really intense and you don't know what's going to happen next, you are pausing every second because you're like, oh, I just got a sword, and this sword has slightly higher vampirism, which is going to steal health, but it has lower damage. But then this ring has damage to all enemies, so maybe I'm going to destroy the enemies faster if I hit them all at the same time, or should I suck life away from them? So you have to like stop the action constantly to tweak your stats, because if you don't, you're fucked and you're going to lose all the resources that you have been grinding for the last 15, 20 minutes.
Wow.
And so it becomes it seems like an idle deck building whatever until you really get into it and you're like, this is a highly tactical game that you can't walk away from, because you're going to walk away and then come back and you're dead and you're like, shit, I don't even know what happened because I'm back at the camp.
Wow.
And it's beautiful and the music's great. And there was something else I was going to say about it, but it's hard to explain without seeing it. It really does not fall into any genre. It is a roguelite, but it's not a deck builder. It's not an idle game.
It's its own game, like totally invents its own.
It really does. And like you said,
piques my interest big time. It really does.
You hit it on the head. It pulls in all the good things from all the genres we love and mixes them together in a way that is weird. Oh, here's the other thing. And I'm sure you've experienced this, especially because you were saying earlier of like, oh, I'm drooling. I can't wait to get my hands on this Diablo 3 or whatever the game was. You know how when you're playing a complex game, the day it comes out, there's no wiki yet.
Yes.
There's no guides. So there was this beautiful week where the whole internet was like, oh my God, this game is so crazy. I don't understand it. It doesn't make sense to me. Do you know what's happening? And people were like, oh, what if you do this? What if you do this? And here's what I didn't understand at first. And this is not spoilers if you're this is actually kind of a beginner's tip, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
If you are about to embark on this game, is that you think you get cards and you're like, okay, I got to play my cards. Why would I play a spider or a vampire card and put enemies on the map to make the run harder for myself? Wouldn't I not want to do that? And
right.
It didn't make sense because you're like, well, I have these cards. And it took a bit of playing and interneting to understand that, like, no, you should only make the loop harder when you want it to be harder. Really, what you're trying to do is optimize your hero to be slightly ahead of the monster curve. You don't want to dominate. I mean, you kind of do want to dominate, but the reason you'd put an enemy obstacle in your way is because A, it synergizes with another card. to ultimately be better in the end, or you need stronger enemies on the map so that they will drop better gear, so that as the difficulty ramps up, you're not stuck with low level gear. So you're purposely throwing obstacles in your own way, but not too many, because like the cards start adding up, and then you're building mountains in the landscape to give yourself more health. But if you build too many mountains, goblin camps start appearing, and the goblins fucking suck. They will fuck you up. And then you build mountains together, and it creates a harpy nest. And the harpy, once per day, as I was saying, those day cycles will fly down from the mountains and become an enemy on the map. So like, you want the health because you need the health, but by gaining health, you're also adding more complexity to the map, which then makes the loops harder. And so, like I said, loop 3, loop 5, loop 10, you can't walk away because the map is going crazy and you need to manage your shit. And that's where this game gets very deep, and I recommend it highly. It's a wonderful game.
Yeah, I have to say that, like, even though I've heard you explain what it is and how it works, I still feel like I will not be able to understand until I am playing it.
You really can't.
But that's still cool. Like, I like that. And like, I am more likely to try out something like that, even though, like, you know, watching the trailers of it, I've been like, I don't know how I feel. I'm fascinated on one end, but on the other end, I'm not like, yeah, give it to me right now. But I think just as a person who's played so many genres of games over such a long period of time, I feel like if something is that unusual, I want to play it just to experience what that's like.
And you will recognize everything in it. You will recognize all the building blocks in there immediately. And then you will love how they are stitched together. Even if you bounce off the game and say like, oh, cool, I appreciate what they're doing and maybe it's not for me, but you will stand back and say, there's really nothing like this around right now.
I love that.
P.S. It'll run on a toaster. It's literally, it's 8-bit graphics. You can play it on anything. And pro tip, and I don't know if you've done any of this in your new PC setup, but Steam streaming or game streaming through NVIDIA or through Steam Link app or software, like the game is so simple. The game is like 2 mouse buttons. Like you hit spacebar to pause, and then you unpause, and then you click on stuff. So what I figured out was, like, on a phone or a tablet, you can emulate a mouse cursor using the Steam Link app. So now I play the game. I play this PC. It's PC only. I mean, God, it needs to come to Switch because it's a perfect Switch game.
Yeah, I was about to say, it's not on Switch. That surprises me.
No, if it was on Switch, there would be no reason not to play this. But like, what stinks about it is, like, I have to boot up my desktop computer. You can play it on a laptop, but like, I got to boot up my desktop computer to play this 8-bit game that will literally run in a window. But no, I can then stream it from my desktop to a tablet or even my phone. And if you don't mind squinting at the text a little bit, it plays like a mobile game. And then I'm on the couch, I'm in bed playing Loop Hero, and it's and there's no action. You get a little blip in the stream. It's not like you're playing, Horizon or whatever. Like you're just watching a pixel guy run around a track. Like, great. Great. I don't need great internet to play that. It's beautiful.
It's right. Yeah, I'm going to have to. Okay. Yeah, I'm going to have to try it. We're going to have to reconvene on this.
Fire it up. Tell me what you think.
Yeah,
I think the devs are adding some they're adding a few tweaks and updates, quality of life stuff. And I'm nowhere near finished with it. I'm in early stages. I'm only on the second chapter, which is like the second boss. The boss fight is its own whole mechanical thing that is very fascinating. And well, we can talk about that when you dive in. But
yes,
it's great.
For sure.
It's great.
Well, I'd be surprised if you were like, yes, and also I'm playing, but I also know you are playing other stuff, which impresses me. So please do go on.
Well, so we have our list here, and in the interest of time, I will share something that I would be curious to get your take on as well. Perhaps you've had these kinds of experiences. I don't know where I found it, cruising some VR subreddits or whatever. But I acquired VR for games. Like, I wanted to play Star Wars Squadrons in VR, which, when it did finally work, I am inside Star Wars. I am in an X-Wing for real, and it's the coolest.
It's happening. This
It's-
rules.
It's happening. And that is why I bought VR. And I really never thought I'd be like, I want to swim with whales, or I want to look at the Mona Lisa, or whatever. Like that just didn't appeal to me. Like I get it. But then I was dabbling with Google Earth VR, and I was looking at other like art programs in VR, and I was just like, okay, there's so much more going on here. And I was reading somebody's recommendation of like, hey, 50 VR experiences that are not games. So I was like, all right. And came across this Steam title called The Museum of Other Realities. Before I go on, are you familiar with this at all? Have you seen this?
No, I'm not. And I intended to look some things up before our chat, and I did. I did look up Lupiro, but I did not look up Museum of Other Realities, so I know nothing.
I'll give you the TLDR. As we know, museum there are other VR experiences that are like, we scanned Versailles with photogrammetry, and you can walk around Versailles, and it's very detailed, and that is very cool. And I think if you can bring access to a beautiful place to more people, I think that's wonderful. This is not that. It is a virtual museum with virtual reality art, which means art from a variety of creators, a lot of them using Tilt Brush, which I believe is a Google three-dimensional art project, where people are painting in 3 dimensions, and then you walk around this museum and you look at this beautiful 3-dimensional painting, and you're like, wow, that's a beautiful, amazing painting that a cool artist did. And then you can go inside the painting and walk around inside the painting, and that is very cool and fun. And then what's more is that there are even more interactive pieces of art that, you know, as well as I do, you can't really explain VR to people verbally or even with a video. But it's like, you know, hey, I'm walking around this museum and I see this like sort of like, I don't know, like a very colorful rainbow bubbly thing of like particles. There's just something moving over there, and I walk up to it in VR, and it turns out it's like this big swirling thing of I can't describe them any other way, like rainbow particles that are pulsating with light, and you touch them with your hand in VR, and they like they fly all over the place, but they have gravity, so they kind of snap back together, and all of a sudden you're playing with this reactive, colorful, beautiful, just like mishmash of, I can't even think of it. There's no analogy in the real world because physics doesn't act like this.
Right.
You're just playing with this toy in a museum, and then you go into another room and you're like, oh, there's like all these like flying, like, you know in Journey where there's like the flying, there's like creatures that are made of they look like they're made of fabric or silk.
Yes,
you know,
yes, I love them.
And when you're playing Journey and all these like beautiful creatures and the music swelling, it kind of looks like that, but you're in a room, and then there's a little icon on the floor, and it says voice reactive. And here's another cool thing. Because your mic is on in your headset, your audio is being not recorded, but is being, you know, you can hear yourself, but then they add an echo to it. So like, you know, when you're in a big museum and you're like talking to your friend or your spouse or whatever, and there's an echo on your voice because you're in a large space.
Right.
It's creating that. And that sounds so simple, but like you put on a VR headset and you're in this giant virtual museum, this room, and your voice is echoing, and you're like, oh yeah, I'm here. I'm really here. So I'm in this room with all these fabric creatures flying around, and the plates, this little moniker says voice reactive. I'm like, okay. And so I go, and all of a sudden these black and red like things that are flying around suddenly light up rainbow colors, and all of a sudden this like these creatures that are swirling around you are reacting to your voice. So you can sing, you can shout, you can talk, and the art that you're experiencing is changing because you are speaking to it. And then you climb up the stairs and there's this giant amoeba that's like pulsating. And there is both like the weirdest, craziest psychedelic crazy shit you could imagine, and then just like beautiful stuff. It's like you put your head inside of a tube, and then all of a sudden you're hearing other people's conversations. It's really it's like if you could go inside of avant-garde art, and again, I am not really a super duper museum person. I'm not an avant-garde person. There's one. And I feel like I'm spoiling a lot of this stuff, but it's really not, because you can't truly get your head around it until you're in it. But it's a giant painting. It's a giant canvas. And then you go inside the canvas, different from the 3D paintings. It's almost like a 2D painting. You go inside it and then you fly around in it.
Wow.
And you fly around for like infinitely, like you, and so you press whatever the buttons are, the triggers on the VR knuckles. And you can kind of like float, like almost like a jetpack, and you're just flying through this psychedelic painting for as long as you want. And I think I said this to you the other day, off the podcast, like it was, I want to go away. Like I want to go, we can't really go anywhere yet right now in the real world. So I want to leave my house and go somewhere and then come back to my house. And so flying around in a psychedelic painting for 30 minutes, and then you take off the headset and you're like, yeah, I was like just gone. There. And now I'm back home again.
See, and this sounds so much more fantastic than like my first VR experiences of that like type. Like okay. So the first VR headset that we owned was the PlayStation VR.
Yes.
And there was something on it that was called Everywhere VR. And it was the simplest thing. So what it was that someone took a GoPro and went to all these like beautiful locations, and they're all over Asia, you know. And I'm a huge fan of Asia in general. So like, I'm going through like places in China and like, seeing a part of Hong Kong and then seeing a part of Japan. And then I'm in Indonesia, and like it, but what it was that it was almost like going through a series of like living photos, I guess is a good way to put it.
It is exactly what I was going to say.
Yeah. Yep. And I feel like, it was free, but if you wanted to download like packs for it to go more places, you could. And so like, you would put your headset on and like, click, and you'd be like, and then, a voice would be like, you're now on, the beach here, or you're now here. And it just had this very calm music. And I mean, it's the simplest of things, right? But like, we were both obsessed with it because this was actually before quarantine. So, like none of this was happening, but we're like, this is so cool, because even though we know that VR is going to get sharper and better, and even though we know that there'll be more complex experiences, standing in a field of lavender, like in the middle of it, just goes as far as the eye can see. I want to have that experience, and I might not be able to have it in real life right this second, but like it was there in VR, and like it gave me like really good chills, even though it wasn't real, if that makes sense. And I only imagine like, what will it be like even 5 years from now when it's in the crispest of HD, and it's like we're really there.
Well, and I'm really fascinated. I don't want to say the word let down, but when you try to play a game or have one of those experiences that are trying to emulate the real world or high fidelity graphics in VR, unless you're running at like 90 frames a second and the resolution is super crisp, it's going to be like I'm in a blurry photograph. And that's okay. That's fine. And that has its enjoyment factor, but you're in a blurry photograph, and then you play stylized games like I'm eager to talk more about Pistol Whip and your enjoyment of it on a future episode.
Sure.
But you play stylized games like that, or oh my God, why am I blanking? The one where the Super Hot. super hot VR, and then going into this museum, it made me it added a dimension to art that is completely new. And by that I mean, like, hey, we're going to a virtual reality museum to look at a high fidelity scan of a painting.
Mhm.
And it's like, I'm looking at a painting, and it's very cool that it looks like the Mona Lisa, and I feel like I'm really there, but it's still art that we understand as traditional art. Whereas this museum is like, did you know artists could make sound reactive art, or art you can like touch that, or that I can float through a painting instead of look at a painting? Like, I guess what I realized recently was like, hey, remember when we were kids, and it was like, if you wanted to get information, you look in the encyclopedia. And then Encarta, the interactive encyclopedia, came on a CD-ROM, and all of a sudden you could like look up a bird species, and then you could hear the bird and look at a picture of the bird. And it's like, wow, you put the pictures from an encyclopedia on a computer screen at a shittier resolution. Wow. And now we look back on that, and that is so dumb compared to what the internet actually became, which is this very complex, sophisticated tool for communications and entertainment. And we use it in all these very deep, sophisticated ways. And then I'm standing in this virtual museum, and I'm like, this is the beginning of a completely new art form. And we tend to think of it as like, oh, what are the cool games? But like, I imagine if I could, this is so stupid, but like, I'm not going to take LSD, but I could take an LSD trip in VR and understand what that is.
Right. Without necessarily compromising your
life.
body.
Yeah. That is something I never thought of before.
Yeah, I didn't either.
And it's rad.
So very, very quick VR detour. So when I was 18, I found this shop. I don't know what else I would call it, that was in the French Quarter, and it was there for a few years. But it was a shop that was trying to kind of get some traction, I guess, in the VR space, because the VR space did exist in, God, I don't know, 1996, 1997, something like that. Anyway, so this chain of stores was trying to come up called Cybermind. And they would let you pay a price to go in and stand in this like huge device, all right, where like it was like a plastic not plastic, metal, like circle about the size. It would just, hold one person, and they'd open this little gate, and you would go in, and they'd close it. And then they would give you a headset that probably weighed like 30 pounds. Like, it was huge. And then you'd go in and you'd play this incredibly like rudimentary games that were just, I can't even really remember them that well.
They were games though. They were not just sort of look at this beach or whatever.
No, they definitely were actual games, but not very well formed games. Like
table tennis or something like that.
No, it wasn't table tennis. There was one where you shot stuff. Yeah, I know that.
Of course.
But yeah, they were a virtual reality entertainment company that was trying to make that happen such a long time ago, and the technology was just so rough. But like, they were still doing it, and at that time, it was still nothing. Like nothing else was quite like it. But like, yeah, I'm going to send, I just like quickly typed it into a browser, and I'm going to send you a picture of the virtual reality helmet, and I hope you are ready to laugh.
I cannot wait. And I also, I'm excited to know that like people were trying back then, and the technology existed, because I don't know, I think we think of this kind of, we think of tech in general as like, is it in my home? Is it on my TV? Is it in my phone? Well, it's not quite ready yet. But like, I was thinking about this recently. Arcade video games were awesome, and graphically, fidelity wise, and animation wise, and frame rate wise, sprite wise, were way ahead of home consoles. Like Nintendo sucked compared to what arcade games looked like, because in an arcade you had the space to have a giant, person-sized computer playing Ninja Turtles. You couldn't have that in your home. Their compromises had to be made. So like, I am simultaneously surprised that there was a virtual reality store in 1996, but also like, yeah, if you had the space, you could set that up, and that was very cool. P.S. Why did you get that in New Orleans and we did not have that in New York?
Dude, I don't know.
I never lived in New York City proper, but what's going on?
I feel like as a teenager, I was always like, this band doesn't come here. I don't get to see this, Broadway show or this band or whatever. And now as an adult, I reflect back and I'm like, oh my God, like I got to like actually like experience virtual reality in a time period when it was like, anyway, I could go on and on, right? It's really, really funny. But Cybermind was a San Francisco-based company, and that is actually where the first, they called it a high-tech entertainment center, and that is where the first one opened. So, of course, now I'm going to go deep, deep into an internet hole and read everything I can about Cybermind.
And also, from a preservation standpoint, like, where are those games? Can they be run or emulated on current VR system? Like, I would be interested to know.
Would be a really good question. I mean, just to see anything from them, like, I do remember, so there was this one game where you were just like a guy trying to shoot things. I don't remember what they were. It was too long ago. And then the other game was called Magball, I think. And I think it was like playing like a virtual hockey game, I think. Once again, I'm going to go into an internet hole and try to find all this.
Talking about wrapping it back to the beginning of this conversation, and perhaps we can wrap it up around here, but
sure.
The maturity of the art form, because when video games began taking shape, it was like, hey, you could play tennis or baseball on your TV. And it's like, well, why? It took a decade for the market and the art form to be like, oh, wait a minute, we don't have to emulate sports that exist. We can have a plumber jumping on a turtles. Like, that could be the form instead of like ping pong. Like, it doesn't have. So of course, when early VR comes out on the scene, it's like, hey, you could shoot stuff. That's what everyone wants to do. But now we are walking around museums and of course we're still shooting stuff, but there's just, it takes time for people to go from like, hey, ping pong, well, now video games that talk about traumatic events and cancer and post-apocalyptic scenario, whatever your story is or whatever your game mechanic is, it's a maturity of the form. And we're in baby times, we're in the beginning still here, which is both terrifying and exciting.
All the time. Like, I think about, when I think about VR, I kid you not, I think about the holodeck. That's what I think about. I'm like, but the Star Wars nerd in me is like, this is the beginning of the holodeck.
Yeah.
And like, that is incredibly, incredibly exciting to me. Because I know that, in the next 10 to 20 years that I'm going to see that turn into something else, the same way that the gigantic Cybermind headset turned into the 2-pound Oculus Quest 2 I wear today,
which will become contact lenses within our lifetime.
Yes.
Sure enough.
Yes. And actually, when I wrote my first novel, which was a sci-fi novel, one of the things that happened in it was that, and this is not particularly unique, right? But like, I did write it, your contact lens, that the internet, the version of the internet that's in the novel, it's built into there. You're blinking, and the power coming on is the opening of your iris.
That is certain. I often say the way our parents ridicule social media or phones or whatever the tech is. Not that our parents don't use phones, of course they do, but that generational divide where like, I don't get this, I'm not doing this. For us, our children will want to put computer chips in their brains, and we will say, okay, we love tech and we love connected and we want, but like, ooh, that feels weird and skeevy. And our kids will be like, well, literally everyone's like, that's what we do now.
Yep.
Because and look how much more efficient I am as a student, as an employee, as a whatever. Like imagine if you were trying to get a job and you were like, I don't really use the internet. You'd be laughed out of the room.
Right.
And that is what our children will experience if they do not have computer chips or contact lenses, connected lenses in their bodies.
I know, it's an absolutely crazy thought, but I always fear like the day, right, when like I suddenly go like, what, like that's like, why would I do that, or like that's just too weird, and then I'm like, oh my god, I'm old.
Yeah, well, we're here, we're getting there. We're almost there. It's
No,
upon us. I
don't want to be there.
It's upon us. Oh, last question, and then perhaps we'll head to a wrap here. But the other point I wanted to make about the museum was that you can go in there alone and just enjoy the art, which is what I did. But you can also go into the social version where you can see other people walking around the museum, and if you see them, I don't think you can hear them or interact with them, but if you like tag them and they accept your request, you can then walk through the museum with them and like chit chat with them as you're experiencing the art together.
Whoa,
which
that's
at first
cool.
I was scared of it because I don't know. I don't know why that is a barrier to me, like speaking on with my voice to strangers, because like, I don't know.
Want to talk to anybody ever.
Same.
Ever.
But then I'm like, but that would be so cool. And then I'm like, I'm scared to do VR chat, but I'm also really want to do VR chat. And so my question for you is like, are you a VR chat person? Do you have any interest in doing that?
No.
None at all.
I have zero interest in doing that unless I am engaged with people I already know. I absolutely refuse to play with people I don't know in almost any circumstance. And one of the reasons why, which we could have a whole discussion about this and we're not going to, is that the minute that I open my mouth and someone hears I'm a girl, the likelihood of some sort of verbal abuse goes up by like 800%.
Sure.
And some women would be like, well, fuck that, I'm going to do it anyway. And for me, I'm like, no, man, I just don't want any of that kind of shit in my life in any way. Like, so
110%. And my two hopes are, hopefully that's getting better. I think it is, but it's not anywhere near, fixed. But secondly, like, okay, maybe if you're playing like Call of Duty, modern shooting, whatever, I would expect some of that. But hopefully if you're walking around a museum or walking around a beach in VR chat or whatever, from what I have observed and understand of those platforms, they are, I don't know, I think there's a good mix of male female.
There might be, and that's a really good point. Like, to actually connect back to what we were saying about Twitch in the beginning of the conversation,
Sure.
If there was a space in VR that had the kind of wholesomeness or warmth or welcoming vibe that some of the Twitch areas I go to do, then I would go, because to me, right. And this is interesting. Like, Twitch was a quote unquote safer place to go because I could just lurk and watch what other people were doing for a while.
Right.
And then when I realized that it was welcoming, it was like, okay, I can interact here.
That's my fear. I don't know how to lurk in a VR chat situation because
I don't either.
I guess you could mute yourself, but if someone like walks up to you and is like, "Hey, how you doing?" Like, it's kind of rude to not like respond. Like, I don't know the etiquette, but to your point, there absolutely are those places because I've seen them in the media and in the world, and also like on the other show that we do at work. We found a community of volunteers who create sign language for deaf people or non-hearing people in VR. Meaning, what we learned was, as you know, depending on your headset and the what do you call them? I call them knuckles, but the motion trackers, the hand trackers, some can create a lot of articulation. You can move your fingers and create sign language in a very precise way, and some of them are super clunky, and you cannot do that. So what we found was that sign language is actually evolving and taking shape in new ways because VR is different from regular life.
Yeah.
And there are tons of super wholesome, awesome people who are bridging the gap between hearing and non-hearing people so that non-hearing people can enjoy VR chat the way hearing people can. And we were like, holy shit. What a great world. What a great internet and gaming VR world we have come upon here. You know, it's good shit.
It's exciting. I mean, you know, I know that it's extremely trendy to say that, like, oh my God, the world is a dumpster fire right now. And in many ways it is. But I think that there are always absolutely amazing, magical things happening all around us all the time, not just tech, but like, yeah, just this conversation is like the amount of hope and excitement for what we've seen and like what's coming and how those two things like stand next to each other. I think it's really great. So it puts
Fully
a smile on my
agree.
face big time.
Well, on that uplifting note, let's get out of here. Before we go, plugs, where can people find you on the internet? What are you doing? What are you working on? What are you streaming? What's coming up?
So I, of course, am on, you know, every social media platform. Although the ones that I use the most frequently are Instagram and, I mean, I guess Twitch is a social media. I don't know if Twitch would fall under that. I guess so, right? So, my most active platform right now is probably Twitch, and I just started streaming a couple months ago, as we talked about earlier. You can find my stream at twitch.tv/Hello Coco B, and I do horror streams on Mondays and lettering on Fridays at 7 p.m. Eastern. Sometimes I might be in a really creative mood that week and just do 2 lettering streams, or you know, maybe I skip, lettering and do 2 horror streams. But for the most part, it's just kind of like me feeling out what I'm in the mood for. So right now I'm doing the Silent Hill 2 remake on Mondays. And then tomorrow I am going to do a cool tutorial to show you how to use lettering skills to make your envelopes really pretty. So that's going to be fun for me tomorrow. And then for my other social media, Twitter and Instagram are both Colette Bennett, all one word. So I'm sure we can put this in the show notes, but
all of it in the show notes. Yep.
That's what's up with me. What about you?
I have not, I've enjoyed the horror streams, and I'm glad you're playing Silent Hill because you talked about it at length here. So I'm looking forward to seeing it in action. I have not been able to catch the lettering streams yet. So I'm looking forward to checking out those as well, especially the envelope ones.
I think it'll be fun. I really do. It's stuff that I never, like, I always thought of this kind of lettering as like stuff that, like, I don't know, like middle-aged moms got into for fun. And then they like, sold their designs to Michaels or something. And like, yeah, some of them do, but like, I don't know, man. It's just, I just really enjoy it. And it's like a fun world for me. So, and I continue branching out into other things like, oh, I'm going to learn watercolor and then I'm going to go do this, or, oh, maybe I'll learn how to paint a galaxy or whatever. So I don't know. It's like I'm having some sort of like creative explosion right now and I'm digging it.
Which is, there has been much written about how even though we're stuck at home with nothing to do, we should be doing all these creative things. We should be letting loose. And yet finding the inspiration to do anything has been a struggle, certainly for me.
Yeah, it's tough. So I'm definitely holding fast to this one. I'm like, you know what? I don't even care if in 2 years from now I'm selling my lettering art to Michaels. I'm like, that's fine.
I mean, well, hey, if you're getting paid, then that's it's not a bad deal.
Yeah.
So you can find me occasionally on Twitter, Matt_Silverman. I also have a YouTube channel with my children, my aforementioned children.
And it's the cutest.
Thank you very much. We do music videos. We do some gaming stuff. As I was saying, introducing my kids to old games. My daughter played the Oregon Trail and asked if there was any like healing potions to craft. And I was like, no. This is a hardcore game with permadeath. Buckle up.
Were you like, you see, my dear, this actually really happened and everyone died.
This is real life. So there's a fun video about that. We recently played Quest for Glory, the original EGA version, and I showed that to my daughter, and then we got to meet the developers, Lori and Corey Cole, which was really a thrill for me because those games are very important to me. So my daughter, 8 years old, got to interview these game developers who are just legends in their field, and that was really exciting. So this is all at Free Dad Videos on YouTube. You can Google that, or youtube.com/freedadvideos. And we do a podcast at work at the Daily Dot called Two Girls, One Podcast, which is all about internet culture and communities, including some gaming and VR stuff that I touched on. We found sex workers in Second Life who have a brothel in Second Life. P.S. Second Life still going strong.
Second Life, man,
lots
it's
of
amazing.
folks kicking around in there doing amazing things. So if you're interested in that sort of stuff, you can check out Two Girls, One Podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. This has been Colette and Matt have entered the chat, our maiden voyage. I'm thrilled about this. If you are listening in your favorite podcast app, rate the show, leave a review. Apple Podcasts, not every platform has this, but if your platform does, please leave a rating or a review if you enjoyed it, because that's going to help other people find the show, help it grow. Thank you for chatting with us. Our theme music is by Azure Flux. Our logo is illustrated by Just Call Me Katerina on Instagram. She is fantastic. Also designed by me. And please tell us what games you are playing, because we would like to hear what you're interested in. Perhaps we're playing them too, or have played them, or we would just like to know about them. Our email is haveenteredthechat@gmail.com. Have entered the chat, all one word, at gmail.com. We would love to hear your thoughts on games or the show. Please be sure to rate and review. And thanks for chatting. We will see you next time.